Welcome on in. This is the RotoWire Fantasy Football Podcast for Thursday, May 22nd. I'm your host, John McKechnie. That is Mario Puig. This podcast is presented by our friends over at Circa. And here over at RotoWire, we are also running a special promo. If you use code YouTube15, you can get 15% off of any RotoWire subscription. So be sure to check that out, whether you're listening via the live stream or via the podcast YouTube 15 once you go to rotowire.com. Today, we are going to be unpacking a bit of the RotoWire Staff Dynasty rookie draft. So we started that league a year ago, just had our draft around this time last week. So we'll unpack our picks. We're going to talk a lot about Luther Burden. And we are also going to kind of give a deeper dive into the Chicago Bears offense as a whole, because I think that it's kind of one of the more important offenses, one way or the other, for fantasy drafts this year, because it's being drafted as if it's going to take this big bounce, this big leap forward. Are we sure that they're going to be able to deliver the goods, though? We're going to get to the bottom of that. But Mario, let's get things rolling. We were picking right next to each other in the Staff Dynasty draft. You had the 6th pick. I had the 7th pick. What'd you do?
I am not going to try to load the sleeper page on my computer because I'm afraid I might crash my browser. But if I remember right, what I did in I don't actually remember my first round pick. I mostly just remember trading up in the second round to get Trey Harris. I traded up from 2.9, I think it was. Traded Jerry Jeudy in that pick just to get to 2.3 and get Trey Harris. But the background here, I guess, is like my team's kind of middling, obviously. And so I suspect Judy's more useful this year than Harris, or whatever. Jeudy might, especially if the Browns get a good quarterback, Jeudy could be good later on too. But in case of Harris, I don't need to worry so much either way about the long-term thing, because I'm just assuming anyway that Justin Herbert would kind of carry most receivers who get snaps in his offense. And I think Harris will get snaps in his offense. Oh, I remember now. I actually got Tetairoa McMillan at the 6th pick. I had as my auto draft queue,
Correct.
McMillan 1 and Loveland 2. I thought McMillan was going to go the pick before mine, and that I was going to get Loveland. So I was a little surprised. The background here is it's a 1.5 PPR tight end league, and so if Loveland's catching 110 passes per year in 2 or 3 years, he would be getting, about as much points as like 160, 170 reception receiver, which would be, of course, extremely valuable. But definitely glad to get McMillan too, because I just think he's good.
Yeah, I think you played those first 2 rounds really well. Grabbing McMillan,
it's also
making
super
that
flex.
move.
I should have mentioned that, I guess.
Right. So that so quarterback probably less of a concern for your team, and that's a good thing. This year there wasn't a ton of opportunities to really kind of restock the coffers that way. So I'm picking right behind you with 1-7. I also have a very middling team in that league. I went running back heavy with my approach. 3 out of my 5 picks, or 3 out of my 4 picks, actually, I did not own. My 3rd round selection went to the running back position. My veteran starters were Breece Hall and Chase Brown. But beyond that, a lot of whiffs, I would say, from last year. Your Zamir Whites, your Dylan Johnsons even of the world. So needed to get a little bit stronger there. And this was a good year to have that particular need. So I got Trevion Henderson in the first round with 1.7. And then because there seemed to be a big run on wide receivers in the early part of the second round, that pushed Cam Scatterbo to me at 2.7, which I thought was a really nice windfall for me. And then at the very end, I got Kyle Manunjai from the Chicago Bears as well with my last pick in the 5th round. Yeah.
Needless to say, you got I actually think Hall and Brown will be quite good as a 1-2 running back punch, but we have something like 4 flex spots or something, so it never hurts to get running backs like the ones you did. And yeah, I think Manunjai, he's the perfect lottery ticket type in that range of the draft, because all the players at this point have some substantial flaw or whatever, some kind of obstacle they're facing to plausibly project as like productive fantasy assets. But Manunjai at least is a guy who should hang around quite a bit and always be pretty good at most things. So maybe he'll never be the best at anything in the running back room, but stuff goes wrong in the season. Running backs get hurt, running backs fumble and coaches get mad at them. Things like that happen. And Manunjai should never be the player who stumbles with an opportunity. Like maybe he doesn't do a whole lot memorable, but if there's an easy play to make, like he won't miss it.
That's what I think. He's just probably replacement level, but and not to helmet scout, not to say that he's the next Pacheco or anything close to that, but he was a productive workhorse back in an offense that was difficult to get production out of it at Rutgers when you're kind of outmatched most weeks of at least conference play, given the nature of the Big Ten. Before we get, so that's sort of our primer on that draft, and just so everyone knows, Luther Burden went with this 5th pick in the 2nd round in this particular rookie draft. So before we give a kind of fuller deep dive onto him, we do have a message from our friends over at Circa. The ultimate fantasy football draft can only take place in Las Vegas. Circa Resort and Casino wants to bring you your whole league to Vegas with the ultimate fantasy football experience giveaway. The winner brings your 12-person league for a 2-night stay at Circa Resort and have a draft at a cabana at Stadium Swim. Plus, limo transportation to and from the airport, a welcome party at Legacy Club, a booth at the world's largest sportsbook, and more. There's no better place to draft than Circa. 21 and up, go to circalasvegas.com for more information. Okay, so Mario, you went ahead and posted up on the RotoWire site a big breakdown of one Luther Burden, one of the more interesting, polarizing prospects in this year's class from a fantasy perspective, a guy who was a huge deal coming out of high school as a 5-star recruit. I remember even watching his commitment ceremony. I saw the Georgia hat on the table. I was very upset when he did not pick that hat up, but I was okay with it. No, because he didn't pick up an Alabama hat either.
Oh, okay. Close call. All right.
So it's all good. Kind of had a all right, learning curve freshman season at Mizzou. His sophomore year is what you kind of hang your hat on ultimately, because the junior year didn't quite take that next leap forward like a lot of people anticipated, myself included. But there are outside factors beyond Burden himself that kind of explained why 2024 maybe didn't go the way that we had hoped. So let's start kind of out wide. What is your general view on Bird, and then we'll take a deeper dives into his athleticism, his fit within the Bears offense and things like that.
Yeah, I thought Burden was a little bit challenging of an evaluation. Like some evaluations are just easy, some receivers, some players at whatever position you can just look at, not even very long, and just say, oh yeah, this guy's great, this guy's this or that or whatever. But with Burden, it was a little bit uneven year to year. Like you said, his freshman year was pretty brutal actually, but that's forgivable. True freshman, 18 years old, those kinds of seasons, when they're very positive, they're almost always like a really good indicator for the future. But if they go poorly, it's not really a slam dunk indicator, because there's still development that the player could go through. And in Burden's case, he was so dominant his sophomore year that I think it's especially in that case easier to look past the difficult true freshman year. Sophomore year, over 32% of Missouri's target share, and he's still above the team baseline numbers for completion percentage and yards per pass attempt. So if you're getting targets upwards of 1 out of 3 passes in an offense, and you're 19 or 20 or whatever he would have been at the time, and while imagine how much that forces the defense to look at you constantly, 1 out of 3 passes. So the defense is gearing up for him, gunning for him constantly, and even still, Burden outplayed the team completion rate, the team yards per attempt numbers, and in a way that was, the kind of thing that it would be kind of shocking if Burden was a bad NFL player, just given that one data point. Like a true sophomore producing like that is in it. Just that alone would put Burden in a pretty unique class of almost all good NFL outcomes. Maybe not as good as we hoped in each case, maybe Burden's case too, but he's going to be a useful player to some, extent or another. And the question, I guess, is did he turn out to be as good of a prospect as it seemed like he was shaping up to be that sophomore year, especially given his 5-star recruiting background? It was like, oh, this guy's going to end up being a top 5, top 10 pick, something like that. So the fact that he fell to the 39th or whatever it was, it opens, I guess, the question, like, did someone was it Burden who screwed up as a junior, playing worse, or did everybody else screw up for changing their minds, about the rounds difference between the year, year of time passes, you let them fall around. It's like, what was that a well-reasoned move to make? And I don't think it's totally obvious. I think you got to kind of read between the lines a little bit with Burden and do some projecting and do some sort of like, devil's advocacy against the things that you take for a given at a glance. But I don't know what else. I don't know how to like quantify it in any way. I get there's no I can't really give you real proof or anything other than just like it's the vibes that I get. That I don't think that Burden's drop off in his junior year was that big of a deal, because he still really emphatically outplayed the Missouri baselines for completion percentage and yards per target. What happened that was so concerning is that his target share dropped by like 10 points, and Theo Weezy or however you say it kind of took the difference, and he's an undrafted guy. So it's like, is Theo Weez as good as Burden, better than Burden? Like, that's the kind of concern that opens up. But Burden, he still outplayed the team baseline like by so much that it was like, objectively, Missouri just screwed up not getting him the ball more. Like they just should have gotten him the ball more. They should have forced it if they had to. And if you must see it, like, also, I guess Brady Cook, is that the name of that quarterback? Like, he got hurt, missed a game, and kind of wasn't good all year. So I think
they also didn't have Cody Schrader.
Oh, yes, that too.
Tenderizing the defense.
Yeah, it was all easy mode with Cody Schrader there. But I think when you look at Burden as he was playing through these 3 years at Missouri, in the cases where he got downfield opportunities, which is I guess I should have said earlier, that's the big concern I guess people raise. Like, he can't run a route. He's just going to be a screen pass merchant. And I feel like the times they ran him downfield, granted, this was almost always from the slot, so I guess I don't know how to get a read on Burden's releases at the line of scrimmage. Sometimes guys get moved into the slot because they can't get releases outside, or because they're slow or something. But sometimes they're just put in the slot because they just sort of decide to do it for no particular reason. And Burden might be that case. You watch him, he's definitely shifty, and like the start-stop, the change of the direction, the explosiveness in general is really evident. I don't know why athletically he would have any trouble getting clean releases, even against jams. Might take some development time. But in any case, when they did send him downfield, the tracking, the hands, the timing in general, like his feel of how to pace himself through the like he would see these passes coming his way downfield, and while running at high speeds, he'd correctly track the ball like a center fielder or whatever, and he would look good doing it. He would catch the ball when the opportunity was there. So there are no cases of Burden being used as a downfield receiver and stumbling and looking bad doing it. That never happened. So I think it's just as much as the Deebo Samuel comparison is what you see often with Burden. I don't think it's quite right. I understand it, but and I've indulged it myself, I'm sure, but the Deebo Samuel comparison is what is almost like a defensive comparison at the outset, right? It's like saying, well, even if Burden can't run routes downfield, he can just be Deebo. And that's not quite right because Deebo was never truly like a screen pass merchant. He was just insanely good at those, but he was also good at other wide receiver stuff. What I think Burden actually compares to more fairly is actually Brandon Ayuk, because Brandon Ayuk was pretty raw as a downfield receiver coming out of Arizona State and was kind of dubbed a screen pass merchant coming out of Arizona State, but he developed as a downfield route runner once he got to San Francisco. And 6'2", 205, Burden's 6'2", 206, 4'4", 140 in Burden's case. Ayuk ran a 4.5 flat at the combine, but I think he might have had some kind of leg injury or something. But athletically, Burden and Ayuk are pretty much a match, I think. And the trajectory matches too. Burden's so-called underdeveloped as a downfield guy, but he has all the athletic tools to develop that way. There's no obvious reason why he can't become that, even if he isn't that in the meantime. And so Ayuk is who I think the long-term comp is. And in the meantime, it's sort of, we just wait to see how soon or if the Bears sort of develop the infrastructure for him to flex that way.
Well, with that in mind, let's take a look at this Bears offense as a whole and how he kind of fits into it. We're looking at an offense where we have Caleb Williams. We'll get to him. Running the show. We've got an offensive line that we think on paper is going to be better. We have an offensive coordinator or guy calling the shots in Ben Johnson, who we think is going to be able to structure things a bit better. But, we also have in Burden's case, Rome Odunze, who, just finished his rookie year, and, he's, on his way into developing. We've got DJ Moore, who's in his prime, of course. And we've got, a couple of tight ends and Colston Loveland and Cole Kmet on top of it all. So it's a lot of pieces to kind of sort together. As far as the ADP goes for the Bears skill position guys, DJ Moore tends to go as the first one off the board, as a mid fourth round guy. Rome Odunze into the early sixth round type of guy. DeAndre Swift goes around pick 81. Luther Burden goes around pick 91. Loveland goes pick 116, and guys like Kmet and Kyle Monongai and Roschon Johnson go much later. Roschon does get drafted just pretty late, like at pick 170 or so, and then it's kind of 50-50 as to whether Kmet and Monongai end up getting selected. So that's the kind of general ADP shape of this team. But do you think the market generally has it right when it comes to how they're preferring these options? And I kind of want to see your thoughts on Rome versus Burden and how the Bears are going to line up in their base formations here.
I'm still pretty high. I'm plenty high on Rome Odunze. I think he's going to be really, really good. I think last year was not a fair chance for him to demonstrate what he was capable of. Same thing with DJ Moore. I mean, it was a circus of a team. So that things didn't go that well for either of those guys is not something that I'm going to assume persists here, because even if Ben Johnson's even kind of like slightly below average as a head coach, it would still constitute an upgrade. It was crazy how dysfunctional that team was. Truly beyond like fiction. Like if you wrote a TV show about that, of the Eberflus reign, the downfall especially, it's like people would be like, this would never happen in real life. This is full of plot holes. But I think DJ Moore has proven himself, including on a lot of other really bad offenses. It's like he's proven himself. Like, look, if I'm not producing, it's not me who's the problem. Clearly, I've asked the stupid Panthers and asked that linebacker turned quarterback at Maryland, whatever his name was. I think in Odunze's case, he can take a pretty obviously a big step forward and justify his ADP if he holds off Burden. But I think Burden starting out in the slot, which is pretty much the only place he played at Missouri, by the way. So again, Burden could very well turn out to be a good boundary receiver in the NFL. I actually expect that he will. But in the meantime, it's a projection, and he might have a fair amount of work to do to get there. So Moore and Odunze might have a true monopoly or close to it on 2 wide sets. And then two wide sets might be the preferred formation of this offense. If Cole Kmet's played more snaps the last 4 years than any tight end in the NFL. And I think he's clearly a solid starter. Like, even if he's not Loveland's level of upside, of course, but like, you don't want a guy like Kmet on the bench. So
yeah,
if
I wanted
Loveland,
to bring that up actually.
If Loveland and Kmet are on the field, it's just Burden isn't. Simple as that.
Right. So that is the pinch point that I'm concerned about. That like someone of these receivers, I think more specifically between Odunze and Burden, is going to get pinched, and it'll be interesting to see what Ben Johnson applies specifically from Detroit to Chicago, because last year the Lions were third in the league in 12 personnel rate, and they were 22nd in 11 personnel, which is when you use 3 wide receivers along with 1 tight end and 1 running back. So he preferred to, and they had Sam Laporta obviously, but they didn't have like a stud second tight end, at least for fantasy purposes. But right. Still, he found a lot of use within those 2 tight end sets. So there is a form and function to that, and therefore there is like that proverbial pinch point with that number 3 wide receiver. I think Odunze, given his frame, given his skill set, given his experience, probably at least starts with the leg up as far as getting the snaps on the boundary. So, there's also like the draft capital thing. Like, yes, his second round pick is a pretty significant investment in a player, but in Burden's case, like that, they also spent a top 10 pick on Colston Loveland, the tight end. Like, how much are they going to kind of restructure things offensively, personnel wise, to like squeeze and make sure that Burden is getting like a ton of reps here?
So I think it's possible that Loveland is brought along slower than people want, be it because of the shoulder injury he's returning from, or whatever demands Ben Johnson might have out of the development of his tight ends. I don't know. There might be a situation where Kmet plays a little more than people expect, especially early on. And the especially concerning thing for Loveland's immediate playing time, I think, is actually that they signed Durham Smythe. It was only a 1-year deal, and Smythe has kind of lost the reputation that he had as recently as like 3 years ago as he's a really good blocker. He's so good at blocking, it doesn't matter that he doesn't catch passes. Like that was kind of the pitch with a guy like Smythe a few years ago, but maybe that's worn off. Maybe I'm wrong to see him as like an overqualified tight end 3. Maybe he's just a tight end 3 at this point. But if Smythe plays at all, that I think could also be at Loveland's expense, and also similarly Burden's even. So it's a tough. It's a bit of a scrum, I think, in that part of the field for the usage of the Bears offense. It's just Loveland's going to be much more probably will be much more productive in his second and third years than he'll be this year. Same is probably true of Burden. And in the meantime, Kmet, I don't think he's exactly disappearing. He's just not going to get as many target opportunities as in past years. But I'd be surprised if Kmet plays fewer than like 650 snaps if he doesn't get traded before the season.
So, I think like the Cole Kmet detail is particularly interesting because it has downstream effects on both Colston Loveland.
It's like the Brock Wright part of the Lions analogy.
Right. And exactly. So it's like one of those inconvenient truths that you kind of have to face up to for fantasy purposes, where it's not everything is going to be geared towards like your favorite guy just getting production just because you want him to.
Yeah. And I will say, I won't assume the Bears will be anywhere near as good as the Lions. It was easy for the Lions to run a lot of 2 tight end run blocking second tight end reps when they have a bunch of leads. The Bears have answers to question that the Lions had proven, in their case. But it is worth remembering, even if the Bears offense stays sputtering, that defense should be pretty good, if not one of the better ones in the league. So the Bears, maybe they don't have a lot of leads, but they still should be running a lot of 2 tight end this year, though. And really, the more they have to play catch up, the more that the more that second tight end rep turns into a third receiver rep. So if I'm wrong, and if the Bears defense is actually garbage, that would be really good for Burden and open up, and I guess Loveland too.
So yeah, that is an interesting point. The complementary element of it, playing into things, and how we're going to see the personnel decisions being made, because like the Lions were able to have a lot of those 2 tight end sets and just kind of grind teams away in the second half, with guys like Montgomery, because they had just pasted their way into getting a big lead more often than not last
Best
year.
OL too. It's like you can leverage that run blocking rep a lot better at tight end when your whole offensive line is just murdering people too.
Yeah, then it's just like you're almost like playing on like game breaker mode, like to like quote like NFL Street or something, where like your O line is already just paving the way.
I forgot what they called that, but I remember the general the general vibe of that, and that was cool. Great game.
Yeah, you become unstoppable. Yeah, NFL Street, goated. I always liked being Ronnie Lott and playing safety, and then just
they paid respect to the legends. That's what
they did.
It's important.
You got to teach the kids about the legends. But before I get like too far afield here, I want to take us back to Burden and where he sits in the redraft realm. And I'm talking specifically as I think most of the time that we're talking about this year, it's through the best ball lens. So I'm going to give you a couple other receivers that are going in his ADP neighborhood. At the higher end, we got Darnell Mooney and Cooper Kupp at 86 for Kupp, 87 for Darnell Mooney. Then you have Burden at 91, Josh Downs at 93, Emeka Egbuka at 93 as well. So basically, there's a pretty tight cluster with Burden, Downs, and Egbuka, with Kupp and Mooney going just a bit before them. How have you been drafting your receivers if you're in that market in this stage of the draft?
To this point, I haven't really been in that market. I at once don't really want to pay that price for Burden. Sometimes you see him go at 90 or so. I don't want to pay that price, but out of that group that you otherwise named, Mooney, the Colts guys, that's generally, and this is important especially for best ball, because you don't have to guess when Burden might get an otherwise fluky opportunity. But in the case of Mooney, I think because of his skill set, and I think because of Drake London's presence, in the case of the Colts guys, because of the quarterback play there, they have a pretty rigid ceiling cap, I think. And in best ball, it's not just the spike week thing. It's that it's worth chasing those spike weeks a little more when you don't. Unlike in redraft, you have to guess correctly. Like, Burden's going to have this fluky thing happen, and because he's good, he'll capitalize. But we, in the meantime, don't know if he's going to get that playing time. So even if he's good, we don't know he'll come through. But if he does, the upside version for Burden is one where it would realistically require like DJ Moore or Rome Odunze missing time. So a little grim. But if one of them did, then Burden would, I think, instantly have much more upside than those Colts guys, because I expect Caleb Williams to easily outproduce whatever the Colts do at quarterback this year. And I think Burden would have so much, obviously, more upside than Mooney, because Mooney's kind of stuck in that. He's a really good wide receiver, too, in real life, but he sometimes gets stuck with the decoy kind of stuff, if only because Drake London's such a target hog. So best ball tournaments, it does make sense, I think, to chase Burden over those other kinds of guys. It's just, incidentally, I'd rather wait, I guess, a little bit and take someone like even Jaden Higgins, I guess.
Yeah, Higgins goes in that area as well. And I think, to your larger point, like in Downs' case, love the floor, love the player. But
it's a shame. Pittman too. It's a real shame.
Yeah, I think it's almost like you like them more in PPR because you just don't like
Yes,
their scoring upside, but it's also
Cooper
like
Cup too. I like an underdog and half point PPR. It's like I barely care about Cooper Cup this year. Like him and Smith and Jigba are going to split like 12 touchdown catches. Who cares?
yeah, right. So that's my like overall concern. I can't really get in with the Buka. I feel like I'm just it's gonna that's gonna be like
I
a
think it
whole
makes
other
some
episode.
sense for the same reason as Burden, though. It's just like, yeah, they're gonna be throwing the ball a lot apparently, and if Evans is out, if Godwin especially is out, then Egbuka would plug right in, and I think he would have quite a bit more upside than those other the Colts guys and Mooney. But yeah, it's just the reason I'm not taking him or Burden is that it's just Higgins is in the same boat to me, and he's somehow going later. There's some other players too that go a little later that I think
I have
can arguably fit in that boat.
I have two that I think you might be thinking of. We'll see. But attached to great quarterbacks, I think is a good way to and great
Oh yes,
offenses is kind of a
just
good
remembered one.
heuristic for this. So I'm buying the Keon Coleman second year.
Yep,
I think that just the way that
he's so
they
cheap.
didn't really touch receiver. Yeah.
You
Like
don't even
if
need to
you,
believe in him to see that he's a good price right now, and I think he could be pretty quite good. And it's like, but I don't care. He's so cheap, doesn't matter.
and same deal with Rashad Bateman to me. Like I feel like for especially like the late season charge that Bateman had, it's like why is he only like he did not rise it enough. Like him and Darnell Mooney were going around the same place in best ball last year.
Hmm.
Bateman probably only went up about 2 rounds, whereas Mooney went up probably about 5. As far as I can tell. So I might be a little bit loose with those numbers, but either way, like Mooney really went up, to where he's a top 90 player, and Bateman is someone that you can get, outside of the top 110, somewhere between 110 and 120. I prefer Bateman at cost, and I think that there's some more upside in that Ravens passing game, even if it's maybe not as high volume. I think the efficiency really good there, and I think that Bateman is actually showing some real potential there. So that's kind of how I'm approaching it. But certainly in teams where I'm drafting Caleb Williams, I definitely have like if I have a clustered pick, like if I'm picking near the wheel, something like that, I'm not opposed to going with a Bird and Caleb Williams like kind of tandem of
No,
picks.
I mean it could be the right pick. I mean, I really think if those slot reps are there for Burden for whatever reason, it's no longer like a projection or it doesn't require any vision or something to imagine how he works at that point. It's just okay, that's obvious runway. We know how 750 snaps from the slot is going to be whatever 110 targets. So if talent like him gets it, and if Caleb's going off, but for some reason or whatever more or Udunze is not, then people would wish they had more Burden exposure.
Yeah, I think so. Let's talk about Caleb Williams a little bit, because it felt like, this time a year ago, myself included, and I think almost anybody was saying, among the guys who have ever been drafted first overall, no one has had this insane wealth of riches that they're walking into. We were wrong about that. And, obviously the offensive line had a lot to do with that. The coaching had a lot to do with it. But either way, it was not quite as good of a setup as we certainly would have hoped. Before I finish that rant, Jamie wants to know, just cut and dried, Burden or Ibuka in best ball?
I guess I kind of like Ibuka a little bit more just because he's a little cheaper, but they're just kind of. Also, I think Ibuka only requires one injury, and incidentally, both the Mike Evans and Chris Godwin, I think, have quite a bit more durability troubles than Moore or Odunze. So I see Egbuka's route to playing time and usage a little easier, but I also think Burden's the better player. So I don't know, Egbuka, but just I guess don't pursue specifically either of them unless you're specifically pursuing, I guess, like a Bears or Buccaneers stack. Like otherwise, I would put those guys in the bucket of like take a few shots at them when they slip past ADP, but otherwise don't. It's not really a player that I'm going to chase personally.
Yeah, like you're not going to go half a round or a full round up to acquire either of those guys on your teams. I think
I guess
that's a great approach.
you can consider their insurance value depending on how much investments you have otherwise in more Odunze, Evans, or Godwin. Like at some point you can start to see a Burden or a Buka as like, well, now I'm covering myself for my other investments.
Yeah, no, that's a really good way to put it as well, especially if you are kind of a volume drafter. But back to Williams. So again, really set up for success last year. Really didn't come through.
Right.
We wanted a lot more than what we ended up getting from Caleb Williams, and I think it's really interesting that the market is largely the same as it was a year ago. At least it feels that way, where he's like a fringe top 100 pick in best ball. I think that's right
Yeah.
around where he was going last year. No, so that that means that like there's so much weight and gravity on either side of the ledger there for Williams. There are the people that believe that okay, you got Ben Johnson, you have your two Roma Dunze, you got prime DJ Moore, you've got Colson Loveland coming in. You've got Luther Burden coming in. You've got an offensive line that should be a lot better. This is the shot for Caleb Williams. And then there's the others that are like, yeah, man, I saw last year. It was horrible. All the things that we were concerned about with his game in college, they all showed up in the pros. And I think all like the it seems like both those factions are represented equally, and that's why we've seen a change in his draft price since last year.
Yeah, it was a brutal year. There's no doubt about it. It's not great, in my opinion, either. That this was a Wickersham or whoever had the anytime dads get involved or moms, honestly, it's just bad. But I'm still hopeful that I'm hopeful Caleb kind of. Not that I'm saying he needs to be a particular thing or another, or that he's like wrong to approach the game the way he does, but if he could just get a little more serious, like take ownership by at least telling his dad or whoever, like, hey, don't talk for me, don't go running your mouth on my behalf. I don't need your help. Show like a kind of a sternness that he hasn't so far. I think it would help a little bit. He definitely seemed a little lackadaisical in some senses, and when that pairs with the on-field result of those ridiculous, holding onto the ball for 15 seconds plays, you do sort of have, or at least I wondered at a certain point, it's like, even if these are just kind of acceptable rookie struggles, which generally they just are, I can't help but wonder if it was avoidable, like maybe he could have just been a little more on the ball, and maybe this could have been avoided somehow, and stuff like that. Sometimes it's just useless speculation that doesn't go anywhere. But I do think there's a pretty good chance Caleb Williams was kind of he was punched in the face in a way that he thought was not possible last year, and I don't know how easy it would have been for someone who had. I'm not saying he's soft, but he was basically like coddled by success, if nothing else, up until that point, and it's like getting that level of shock is sometimes something a rookie never really recovers from in the season. I do think, though, with Ben Johnson directing him, and with Caleb's going to be a year older, he's going to change as a person in the upcoming years, and I do think it makes sense that, especially since we weren't wrong about the infrastructure being so good, there was a ton of talent in Chicago. It was just like the coaches were so bad the team could not function as a professional organization. Those benefits are the pluses being DJ Moore, Odunze, now Burden, and Loveland. It's all still there, and the offensive line is better than last year. Ben Johnson, I think, could be something like an average offensive coach and still mark a huge upgrade in the circumstances yet from last year. So I think it's reasonable to not overlook, I guess, Caleb Williams's low points from last year, or the concerns in his game, which he does have to stop holding onto the ball forever. Like, that's just ridiculous. He has to stop doing that. But if he does, it's kind of like the only thing he really needs to do. Just kind of get it together, get a little more on rhythm, get a little more punctual. That would turn him from that sort of teetering kind of quarterback play that he had last year into one that's just kind of locked in and making pretty consistent big plays. So he needs to harness that creativity that like tempts him into dragging out plays. Like he needs to learn how to actually apply it, in a professional way, and get on the details such that he can actually harness that creativity instead of just being kind of like a slave to it. So I think his career could still go a number of ways, but I would be surprised if Caleb Williams turns out to be like an actual bust. I think he at worst, I expect him to be in that like Kyler Murray category where people kind of just argue like, is he good or does he suck? And it's like he's probably
the range is like is he QB8 or QB12? Like that's sort
and
of.
I do think he could be. I still think Caleb could be like a top 3 or 5 NFL quarterback. It's just he needs to improve in some ways.
Yeah, no, he absolutely does, and I think that the Bears, credit to them for I think doing a lot of things this offseason to set him up for success in a better way, that in a more material, realistic way than he was set up a year ago. And having watched Williams, all 3 years in college, like the way that his confidence was shot, especially like in the second half of the season last year, was so kind of unlike anything that we saw. So, kind of to your point about him almost being the victim of his own success at the college level. And everyone, brings up the Notre Dame game or the Washington game, stuff like that. But Washington Huskies for the record, not the Commanders game, which was also pretty wild. But I just feel like we saw, like, when Caleb Williams has like confidence in what's going on around him and what he's seeing out there and how he's playing, like, it kind of just, it all like kind of is like a force multiplier. And I think that we saw like the inverse of that last year, where like he just kind of lost complete faith in everything that with the Bears, like offensive line, play calling,
everything was off the rails.
And so, of course, like he kind of, he folded and like, you shouldn't like excuse that, but I think you can acknowledge that that's what happened. And I think that
I don't think he quite folded, to be fair. I think he got like rattled and shocked. I think he was actually excuse me. I think he was actually pretty tough and everything. It's just the thing that alarmed me is given the seeming innate talent that he has, the amount of struggle that he also dealt with. It almost looked like I don't know, like the player equivalent of when someone didn't study for the test, kind of like. Like, yeah, they might be smart, but they look like they're trying to figure out all the answers based on like just the questions they're being asked and context clues, and like they're kind of winging it.
Yeah, no, I think that's an apt comparison, definitely. So all in all, are we buying?
I like him as a best ball pick anyway, because like it doesn't not to do the trope about better best ball pick than redraft as a cop-out for whatever bad things happen. It's just that quarterback at all positions, this applies somewhat, but like we saw with Caleb last year, how he can have a big fantasy day, like I guess the Lions games, as long as he just throws like 40 passes. It's like, just got to throw like 40 passes and it could be ugly in the real game, it could be trash football, but for fantasy and for best ball, it's like, you get like a 30-point upside from a guy like Williams, sometimes against good defenses. So as long as he's throwing the ball and running the ball a certain amount, it's like we don't even really care how good he is at it, because the numbers accumulate with the usage.
They do. So I think that's a good summation of how to view him for your best ball drafts. You mentioned Kyler Murray. He goes about 5 picks ahead of Williams, and Williams basically a coin flip between him and Bo Nix.
I safely prefer Caleb out of that group, but I'm not buying from it a whole lot yet. I'm more so going with like Trevor Lawrence, and every single draft I do in best ball is just Justin Fields and either Trevor Lawrence or like Pat Mahomes or something.
Oh, okay. All right. I'm gonna have to get.
But I do like Caleb there, and I can't go into the year with no Caleb exposure.
I have almost an uncomfortable amount of Caleb Williams so far, just because I'm still kind of figuring out where I land on the whole dealio. But I'm willing to at least take the plunge. I think the upside case is
I'm not
definitely
against it.
there.
It's just Lawrence going in like the 13th round or whatever is
Yep.
so ridiculous. I'm just like, I gotta just hammer this until people snap out of it and they're like, oh wait, that doesn't make any sense. He should go in the 10th or whatever. He should go ahead of Knicks,
And
whatever.
speaking of the Jags, shortly before we got on the air, I'm in too many best ball slow drafts right now, and I grabbed a Travis Etienne share earlier on today. But
Never give up the truth. Never let go of it. We believe in truth here.
And it is funny. If you listen to last week's episode, we talked a little bit about Bashal Tutin going ahead of Travis Etienne, and the faction is already splintered because Liam Cohen admitted that Bashal Tutin fumbled a couple times earlier this week. So that's over.
Yeah, I mean, I do think I am actually an unrepentant ETN truther even now, and I think he's clearly the best running back on that team. But to be fair to Tutin, what was it? Like Kareem Hunt and James Cook both kind of like on their first carries fumbled, and then like pretty much never. In Hunt's case, he never fumbled in college before that, so that was the big. People freaked out for a good 15 minutes about how like what are the odds, right. And it actually is like he just fixed it. It never happened again. But yeah, I think Tutin does have work to do there clearly, and I found something a little bit weird, a little bit of a hitch maybe in his motion or processing or trigger or something because he needs kind of a lot of runway, but if he holds onto the ball, he as much as I'm an ETN truther, it's like Tutin could be a problem for my ETN shares.
Yeah, I mean, it's not often that you get a running back that runs in the low 4.3s. Like that's.
Do you remember who had that 40, John?
Devin Achane?
No, actually, Keith Marshall.
That's right. He did. We called that. We called that he'd run a really fast 40.
Well, you did. I didn't remember I didn't know anything about him.
I like to think that there's an alternate universe in which Keith Marshall never got hurt. Todd Gurley never got hurt, although he had some amazing NFL seasons, and Zamir White too. I think all three of those guys could have been. Yeah, that was the Georgia in me, but Lattimore was an unbelievable talent who we never really got to see come to fruition at the pro level. One more Georgia running back that also fits the description of this episode before we get out of here, but the Bears run game. We loved what we saw from the run game in Detroit. These last couple of years with Jahmyr Gibbs and David Montgomery, no one was particularly happy with their returns from DeAndre Swift last year. Same way that they weren't stoked about what they got from Caleb Williams either. But similarly, Swift, his ADP hasn't really suffered a whole lot for the misgivings of last year. He's still going it as like an 8th round type of selection, pick 81. So where are you with Swift? And, it is an offense that didn't really invest in the running back position in the draft until Kyle Monangai in the 7th round. So is Swift going to be worth it, or is he like someone that, we need to be watching the Bears closely as a team that brings in a vet once we get to training camp?
Definitely got to watch them. I can't remember if is it pretty much just Chubb, I guess Chubb and Dobbins, I guess, are the main free agents at running back. If it might be one of those things, like if the Bears get to training camp and Ben Johnson doesn't like the way Monangai looks or doesn't like the way Monangai or Roshan, if they look at the running backs in camp and are like, these guys are a bunch of bozos, we need to get somebody, like, then I would definitely worry about the Bears being the kind of team that goes and gets Dobbins. And if I know Dobbins could easily miss just like the next 4 years or something, but he could also be one of the 10 best running backs in a given NFL weekend. And so I definitely think Swift would be in big trouble with a signing like that. Chubb, I think there could be a coexistence because especially at this point, Chubb is not playing a lot of passing down snaps, and Swift, even though he's kind of mid or whatever, he's kind of average, I still don't think he's bad. And I don't think he's the reason for any of the Bears' problems last year.
No, it's just like their problems were going to kind of like have their runoff like fall on Swift. You know what I mean? Like if everything else is falling apart, then like your run game is not going to be
And he's not like a rah-rah guy. Like people used to complain about him because he's like, they love to see running backs that just like fight pointlessly with like great, physical strength for every yard. And Swift's just he'll just kind of get knocked over sometimes without much fight. And it's like, you weren't winning that game if you got 2 more yards. Get over it.
And I'm almost cool with it because Swift he's not the most durable guy in the world. Like I prefer him to like kind of play within himself and not try to Chris Ivory every run.
Yeah,
it's like
Ja'Cory
a little bit.
Ja'Cory Krosky guy. That's it's like Chris Ivory running downhill with like a shopping cart kind of thing. But yeah, in the case of I guess so Swift, in my opinion, is clearly doing quite a bit for the Bears this year. The question is like, who else and to what extent do the other ones getting? Because as much as we talked about Manunjai and how he could be kind of like a stabilizing sort of presence to them, Johnson might prefer the more overt thunder and lightning kind of bit where there's a designated power guy, designated between the tackles guy. And in terms of on-hand personnel, I guess kind of by default, that would be Roschon Johnson.
Right. And so, Jamie actually mentioned Roschon in the chat. I think, in credit to those who got in on the Roschon hype train, but still are riding it in 2025 because I think this might be the year that
the price
pays
is
off.
cheap now, though.
Yes, exactly.
Like you don't have to take him in the 10th round or whatever. It's like, I'll take anybody in the 20th round.
100%. So he's mentioning that he's gone up a little bit. Pre-draft, he was like that last round flyer. Now he's more reliably getting drafted in each of these best ball drafts, but round pick 160 or so is Roschon Johnson. So I mean,
Chubb would be really bad for him. Dobbins, of course, it would be bad for all of them. But I do think if they don't get any other power person, then it is Johnson who gets those kinds of things. It's just it's not Manunjai's bit. It's not Swift's bit.
Yeah, so I think I might start accumulating at cost a couple Roschon Johnson shares, and yeah, I think some teams where I'm a little bit more optimistic about the Bears, I think I will probably start grabbing some Swift shares as well. But yeah, the Bears are just fascinating. I think that they definitely warranted an episode kind of unto themselves, just because there was so much hype last year, it went so wrong, and yet we're still getting a lot of hype this year because there's good reason to be hyped about them. But we'll see, which of that ends up being good and which of that ends up falling a bit flat, because something is going to go wrong, among Roma Dunze or Luther Burden or Colson Love.
Well, it also might be other teams in the NFC North. I mean, somebody gets bad luck most years. Somebody, maybe multiple teams, and if I don't know if the conditions go from extremely difficult to borderline impossible from last year to something just a little more toward the league norm, should at least be a wild card competitive team.
Yeah, I think I'm going to subtract a few wins from the Vikings, and I'll probably subtract a couple from the Lions as well. And the Packers, I have some questions too. So this division is really interesting to parse out, and I think maybe each of those offenses kind of deserve an episode similar to this, because there's a lot.
Long off season, John.
Yeah, it is. We got content to fill, folks. It's not even Memorial Day. That's going to do it for us here on this edition of the RotoWire Fantasy Football Podcast. Again, if you're watching on live stream, look over at that code on the bottom of your screen. If you're listening in audio form, go to rotowire.com. Use code YouTube15. You can get 15% off any RotoWire subscription. And also big thanks to our sponsors over at Circa. For John McKechnie, I'm for Mario Puig, I'm John McKechnie. That's right. That's my name. That's going to do it for us here. Enjoy your Memorial Day, everybody. Thanks for listening.